Okay, I'd like to go ahead and call the June 1st Board of Finance meeting to order, please. Present tonight are Carl Johnson, Gary Nino, good morning. Sarah Nelson, Dan Smith, Paul Simons. Online is Winona Burdine. Mike Anderson has asked you to be seated for him tonight. Winona, if you don't mind.
Sure, thank you.
Great, thank you. Amy's also online, and Amy Friend. Okay, first line item is public comments, if there are any. None in the room. I don't see a hand online. Okay, great. Line item number 3, additional appropriations. And I'm hoping Bob and or Christine can speak to those.
Sure. This is the way we're going to do this. Is I'm going to introduce it, and then I'm going to turn it right over to Christine. So we're looking at appropriation for the Rec Commission. It's towards the end of the fiscal year, as we know. There's been a couple of things that have happened, all good things. But I'm going to have Christine explain to you the what. There's actually 2 parts to the appropriation. She'll explain it to you. Thank you.
Okay, so the first request is an additional $5,500 for program fees to go into B16.01 program expenses from the undesignated fund. So we have had, I don't know if it's because of COVID subsiding, but we have a very large increase in all of our recreation program attendance. So the way that the majority of our programs work is if 10 people sign up to take the yoga class, the instructor gets paid for those 10 participants. We have a 10% charge that we charge higher for non-resident participants. So for that $50, it would be a $55 charge for a non-resident of town, and that additional $5 stays with the revenue for the town, and it's still $50 getting paid out to the instructor. So the majority of these, we are getting a direct revenue to offset the expenditure. So at the beginning of the budget process, the rec director sits down and says, okay, I think we're going to have X number of kids participate in dance, this many kids participate in the basketball program, and so on. So everything is based on prior year numbers, estimates that we think we're going to have. We may have new programs that we didn't put into the budget. So for example, our youth soccer camps, not the in-town soccer program, but the individual camps, we expected that we were going to have $2,580 in revenue. We actually had $7,995. So we are paying that out to the instructors. So because of all of these increases, we need an additional $5,500 for the programs that are being held through June 30th. When we realized that we were at this point, we said no new programs to kind of mitigate any issues. But we do need that to pay for the people that have already registered for the programs that are running through June 30th. Do you want to give me questions on that before I go to the second one, or talk about both and then questions?
Just one, what's the original allotment of dollars for 16.01? Was it 18? I forget what it was now.
I'll pull it up right now.
I shouldn't write on this. Yes.
Okay, so big 16.01 for the current fiscal year was $47,235.
And we're running like $5,500 short for the rest of this.
For the programs to pay out through the rest of the year, yes.
I know one of the things we talked about, and we all were here about appropriations, but this one is really unexpected COVID type. Everybody wants to come to the recreation group and do their thing.
And we have received revenue to offset this expense.
Okay.
That was going to be my question. What's the increased revenue? Do you know?
So when I ran the report before the Board of Selectmen's meeting, was in their packet. Give me 1 second to pull it up from my email. Okay, so this fiscal year, I ran this report on 5/19. We had brought in $57,869 in revenue for this year. And we had budgeted 52,355. So we're still bringing in revenue, and it's not a one-to-one offset because we do have some of the programs that, like our summer camp isn't a one-to-one, the soccer isn't one-to-one to pay out, and basketball isn't one-to-one to pay out.
By that, you mean like some revenue is higher for certain camps than others?
Right,
Gotcha.
so when we have our individual instruction programs, mountain biking, yoga, art classes, it's a per person fee that's being paid in and directly paid out to the
Yeah,
instructor.
yeah. Okay. Okay, so this is for
The current year.
the current year, but it's June 1st. So this is for this budget that was just approved. No,
This is the current year that we're in right now to get us through to June 30th, not the budget that starts July 1.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep, so this is just dollars that have already been allotted and promised because we brought in the revenue
Yeah.
and so the kids or adults have taken the programs. Now we need to pay the instructors.
Do we anticipate this for the next budget cycle?
No,
No.
this is a good problem to have.
Agreed.
Because we want people to participate in our programs. And it is one of those positives that it has a revenue offset.
Yeah.
So it's honestly right around the same amount. Cause like I said, we had budgeted 52,355 and we've brought in 57,869. So, and we're asking for an additional 5,500.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a good problem to have. I agree that probably COVID brought more, like I know a lot of people put their kids in rec because they figured like, just keep them around the kids in town, less exposure, or whatever. But then they realized how great the programs were. So we've already, the budget for this current fiscal year, which we approved, is already accounted for the increase in expected increase.
We
in-
looked at the numbers that we had gotten this year, and
Yeah.
since they were already elevated, most likely we should be on track.
Okay.
This is the first year since I've been here that we've had this problem. I know 2 years were COVID related. But I think we are trending in the right
Yeah.
direction.
Okay, thank you.
Christine, are you able to provide the math one more time? I apologize. So the additional revenue and the ask, please.
Yep, so we've brought in $57,869 as of May 19th. And we had budgeted 52,355. So that is 5,000, right around $5,500, which is exactly what we're asking for.
Thank you.
I make a motion that we approve.
Let's do both of them,
Okay.
or if you want to do them separate, it's up to you.
Let's put this behind us.
But there's a second one related to rec on the
Okay,
appropriation
good. All
form.
right, let's go.
Okay, so.
That's good to hear, though.
Our second ask is for $1,110 for camp counselor salaries, for B 16.03 salaries, camps and officials from the undesignated fund. We have had a jump in our enrollment for our summer camp program. We had to actually cap the weeks this year because we are trying to maintain ratios of counselors to campers. We are adding an additional assistant camp director, and we put that in the budget for starting July 1. And then we've given a small increase to our camp director because she's had such a fantastic program. So right now we have a 7-week program, and 3 of the 7 weeks are already maxed out. The lowest week is at 29 and the others are in the 30s. So we need, with changes in minimum wage and with the additional counselors we're having to maintain the integrity of the program, we are looking for $1,110 for the 9 days of camp that fall in this fiscal year.
Someone else's turn? I make a motion, we approve it.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye. I count 1, 2, 3, 4. Winona?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for bringing that to a close, Gary. Okay, next item, ARPA funding for small business program. Not sure who's presenting on
I'll
that.
start
but
again.
I know that,
is there a document that goes with this? I know, what's it called?
one of the.
I'm not seeing a document called ARPA funding, so I'm just,
Business Grant Program,
Thank you.
51922 NKR.
thank you.
Okay, so during COVID, we tried to do things on mental health, small business and so on. That was with the directive we had from things like the community conversation. So back in December, when we planned the community conversation, we wanted to make sure that we had enough money earmarked for this program. It wasn't totally written yet. We knew it was coming. So the Board of Selectmen at that time earmarked $100,000 for this program. We recently, after it was completed, we had a complete copy given to us by Nate. We formally approved it to send it to you. Because of the amount, it still has to go to a town meeting. But we wanted to send it to you, and I thought that with Nate being here, he could explain if you had any questions. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Bob, what was that amount of that funding you said?
I believe it's $100,000, $100,000,
I'm sorry. Dan.
$100,000.
Nice and even. Okay, thank you.
$100,000.
And again, and that would bring us pretty much to the end of our. ARPA fund.
Not quite.
Not quite, but
There's
Borderline.
more, there's more to come.
You would still have $140,074.04
Oh.
left to allocate.
You'll be seeing that coming up in the near future because I'm holding out hope that that will cover all the expenses for this building.
right. What questions from anyone on the board?
I think Sam's online also, besides the chairman, besides Nate being here, if you have questions.
I'm not, and I just may not have read far enough, but I'm not seeing, are there any, is there a time frame range that this would apply for? So I see the criteria, so if you had decreased revenue or capacity to weather financial hardship, payroll, et cetera, is it like since March of 2020, like what's the?
In the enabling language tracks with the federal regulations relative to, we have to expend a certain amount by, I believe the dates are in here. We have to have it obligated and then spent by 2026. So it's obligated by December the 31st, 2024, expended by December 31st, 2026, which are those are the regulations that are tied to the federal appropriations. So that's the federal rules coming through to the program. So ultimately, we don't have a specific sunset other than those two dates, which are given to us by the federal government.
There,
I'm
the
actually-
the start time was March 3rd, 2021 for the ARPA funds.
Okay.
So that was any costs incurred on or after March 3rd, 2021.
That, okay, that was my question. Thank you
Sorry.
so much. No, no, it's good info.
So $100,000, Bob, is an awfully round number. So how did we come up with an estimate that came with 6 zeros?
Oh, because
5
it's,
zeros.
because it's, we're putting money aside. It's not an estimate. We don't have 5 or 6 or 7 businesses waiting in line for this.
Uh-huh.
So it's, what would be a good number? I'm sure Brett will tell you, he looked at other towns, so what they put aside. So we put aside a number. It may not go, it may not all go. We might give 57,000 out, so.
And if it doesn't go, what happens?
It goes back to the town as future ARPA funding for another project before 2024.
All right.
So it's a number that we use, we think, what do we say was it 5,000 or 10,000 max? for
It's, the program is maxed at 10,000, although we have the guidance document says that the average, we're looking to make grants in the 2,000 to 5,000 range.
So we wanted to make sure it was open to enough businesses. One business couldn't come in and just take the whole thing. I'm guessing we may not spend 100,000, but at least it's there. It's a bank. It sounds like it's a good amount of money to help small business.
I don't disagree, but I have, it's a, well, 2,000 into 100,000 is a lot. I don't know if we have that many small businesses in town. And I'm a little nervous about allocating and sort of taking that out of available ARPA funding for other needy things. It sounds like a big bite. That's,
So it may be, we don't know, because we don't know who's going to come out of the woodwork to ask for money. And as Nate said, it's 2,000 to 5,000, but could go up to 10,000, correct?
Correct.
So if 10 businesses come in and ask for 10,000, it can show receipts for $10,000 worth of things they bought during COVID, because the things they had to do to keep their business running. We wanted to make sure we had enough money for that. If it's just to be 2023 and we've only spent, 28,000 of it, you could then vote to put it back, take it out, drop it down to 50,000 or 40,000, and put the rest back into ARPA funding. It's easy to go backwards than it is to go forward. So if we
Yeah,
came and
I-
asked for
I'm
20
more-
and then asked for another 20, then asked for another 20.
I'm more questioning, or sorry, I don't want to be questioning it. The oversight of the allocation of the $100,000. How does that? how is
It's in
done?
that multi-page report that you have in your packet. It was put this way, that was worked on for months because we didn't approve it in December because we didn't feel it was conclusive enough.
Okay.
That's why we only earmarked the money at that time. But now we've read it and we feel like they've done their due diligence. It's pretty much all there, Gary. It's can't even tell you how many pages are in it, but it's a pretty long document.
And just to add, as we were about to finalize things in December and we were moving into January, we had the program the way it was originally written. And then our friends at the federal government changed the rules and we had to rewrite the whole thing. So it was one of those where the qualification standards are literally copied and pasted from the federal regulations as to what we have to show to be able to create a grant. Operationally, it will come in, an application will come into the land use office.
Yeah.
Be caught by effectively by planning. We will process that forward. I'm planning on also using Ivana and we had an approval for a budget transfer to cover her for an hour a day, which I have to say has been an amazing resource for EDC.
Mhm.
We will process those. Christine and I are sort of the internal staff review of the application. We did get some direction from the EDC that we will be handling some very sensitive financial documents potentially for businesses, including tax returns. Ideally, we're not going to be sharing tax returns with the Economic Development Commission. So we will put together a final recommendation to EDC. We will then take them in front of the EDC and ultimately Economic Development Commission will make the determination as to whether or not a grant will be awarded and what amount.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Please. Did I hear you say something about 2026,
Yet that the federal guidelines, we have to have it spent by 2026.
not 2024?
Obligated by 2024, spent by 2026.
Okay. You have a feel for how many small businesses might be looking for some of these funds? Is it 10 or is it 100?
As I have had just sort of that communication with the business community as they come through town hall, those that have found out about it, I think are very interested, especially the hotels. As I've spoken with them, they clearly had additional expenses. They were shut down for a long period of time. They weathered the storm, but there are some real encumbrances that they took onto their books. I think we're going to see them come in with some fairly large requests. Some of the smaller businesses, it might be, the cleaning supplies and the masks and those things that if you still have those receipts, you can get them reimbursed through the program. There's different qualifications. Technically, you can, if you had employment expenses,
Mhm.
or if you paid people to, when they were at home, you just wanted to keep them on the payroll, those would all be eligible expenses as well. But as we have had communication with the business community, as they've understood that there's been a lot of interest, I would also say EDC is focusing, as soon as we have this program, if we can get it approved, obviously process-wise, Board of Finance, then town meeting. If that gets approved, we have a communications program that we're working on establishing with the business community itself, an email list so we can blast it out. We'll also share it with hard copy sent to the business community. So we are going to have a lot of communications with them to be able to let them know that the program is there and they're eligible for it.
And you said it was a 10 grand max.
Correct.
So it feels like there could be more than 10 businesses then. Just from my understanding.
And the other part is it's got to be a small business. I know there's not a lot of large businesses in North Stonington, but we really wanted to focus on small business domiciled in North Stonington. That's the main focus of the program. You theoretically could have a large corporation who's on our grant list who may theoretically be eligible for it, but if they have more than 50 employees, then they're not eligible.
Okay. I guess my first thought with talking about that was, do we sneak up on it some? Is 50 grand the number or something? But it sounds like 100 could go pretty fast if just a couple handful of businesses come in.
There's a similar program. I can't remember the town off. We actually got some of our enabling language from another town in Connecticut. Obviously larger than North Stonington. They did 150,000, went through that very quickly, came back with another, I think it was $50,000 or $100,000 after that of their money. And they moved through that. They serviced, hundreds of applications through that. So when the programs have been put out and allowed to grow, they've been very well received and the dollars have been spent. And ultimately for what I think the funding in part was really designed for at the federal level, is to help
Right.
the small businesses that were really heavily impacted by COVID.
Go ahead,
Winona, I have a question about the number of employees. Is that when they apply or as of March of 2021?
As far as I believe it could be either. It just says employ not more than 50 employees. They have to demonstrate eligibility for a grant pursuant to the following criteria, and one of those is employ not more than 50 employees. That application would have to be during that period of time, they would have to have had 50 or fewer employees. Now, if they had 100 and they dropped down to 49, that would be something that the EDC would need to consider as to whether or not that would be an eligible source for a grant.
Okay, and I do see that the application asks for a number of employees on different time periods. I just wasn't sure when the 50 was.
Yeah, the reasoning behind the needing to know, because one of the eligible criteria is that you had a significant one of two things. You could have had to have brought more people on because you had to have somebody an employee counting people at your door, or additional services that you needed to bring a new employee in. That's an eligible expense. And the inverse of that's also an eligible expense, which is we paid our people to keep them on the payroll. In the end, they weren't doing anything for us because they were sitting at home. That would also be an eligible expense. So part of the criteria that the federal government laid out was you have to be able to demonstrate either a loss of revenue or a loss of employees as a consequence of COVID. One of the ways they demonstrated is you show your tax returns or you show your employment records, one of the two, and compare it to where you were during the grant request.
Maybe you or Sam online could answer this. How many businesses are eligible in the town of North Stonington right now for this?
I don't have a good number for you.
How many businesses are in North Stonington right now?
We have, that's a terrific question that we are actually endeavoring to respond to. As we were working on our communications program, my office had a list of approximately 150 businesses that were identified on that list. we sent, and there's a sister program to this, which is the No Stonington Works program, which is a $500 bonus for any employer who wants to bring a new employee on that goes to the employee for starting their new job. We wanted to communicate that program to the business community. We started with this list of about 150 that was in a spreadsheet in the planning office relative to EDC. We sent hard copies out to all of those 150 businesses. About 20% were returned. So to say that our list of businesses was a little out of date was an understatement. So one of the first things we did is we said, we need to create a new paradigm for how we, one, identify businesses in town so we can better communicate with them. And to that, we've had an effort around town hall to sort of talk to the assessor's office to get their list for who's on the grand list and running those. When we ran the grand list for those who pay personal property taxes, it was started out at about 800. We widowed that down to in the 250 range. And Ivana has been continuously working on with perfecting that list as we have over the last couple of weeks. That's what she's been really working on. That is a very tough question sometimes to get a great answer to, but it's also one of those that we need to have a good answer to if we're going to be effective in taking programs like this or other types of programming and communicating with the business community in our own town. So we've taken that to heart. Really, it's been an effort that's crossing all sections of different offices in town hall to get a good list. So I can give you a good straight answer that says we have precisely 243. I'd love to give you that answer, but it's going to take a little while to get it for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Dan already asked my first one. So the second one sort of influenced by it, and it kind of goes to what Gary was talking about. I would have loved some sort of mathematical model. We think it's about, and it just doesn't have to be fancy, but like 80% of our businesses is this number. If 25% of them, like to go into the 100,000, I don't like finger in the air math. It just sort of, I'm sitting on the board of finance, so I think that's.
I think one of our issues with the business identification thing is we have a lot of land that's controlled by LLCs.
Mhm.
Is that a business or is it just ownership of land? So there's some of those pieces of the puzzle. I would love to have that same formula. I think it starts with identifying that overall number of businesses and trying to get an appreciation for who those folks are. You have a lot of individual one person gang type of businesses where you may have it's a side gig or something along those lines. You've got a lot of those as well. So there's a lot of the tapestry of business in the community is really a lot more diverse than what would, you can walk up and down Main Street or walk up and down Route 2 and sort of count businesses. That's one way to do it. But honestly, you get a really inadequate number because there's a lot of home-based businesses and there's a lot of people that do business work out there.
Yeah,
It's hard to tell.
I think assumptions are fine. Like
Yeah.
it always has to come with assumptions, right? We're making these assumptions. We know this isn't a precise number, but we're making the assumption that there could be anywhere from 20 to 50
Right.
businesses that apply, so not something you can necessarily answer in this moment, but for
Mhm.
me to feel comfortable approving, that would be something I would love to see. I think the second thing is your approval process was very light. So there's a lot of criteria on what applies, but I'd like to understand what your guardrails and guidelines are for approval so that we don't run into a situation of bias, right? Like that person, I think theirs got approved because they have a bunch of friends who are, on the committee and that person didn't get it. So I'd love to see something a little bit more structured around, people who have we're going to give priority to people who check 5 of the 6 boxes or whatever that
Mhm.
should look like, something that's a little bit more structured.
I wish I could have invited you to some of the conversations that EDC had because their direction that they gave me as the person who was writing the program was to be as light as possible, to give as much inherent flexibility to the program so that we have these, to put it bluntly, the federal regulations are quite vague. it's difficult to understand. You know, you read through them, and I think if we all read through them, we probably come up with a legitimate way of approving or not approving certain applications. But the direction that EDC wanted to be was, one, flexibility, being light to the touch on what we were asking for, and really putting it on the individual in business to say, tell us your story, and give them a blank piece of paper in which to tell that story to us. And then from there, hopefully we have enough resources to be able to allow applications to be funded appropriately.
And if I'm sitting on the other side of the fence, I totally appreciate that flexibility. What I'm talking about is protecting the people making the decision from getting fingers pointed at them that it wasn't a fair decision. So,
I think that was a responsibility that, you know, as staff, we'll get it queued up, but ultimately EDC as a commission said, we're willing to take that upon our shoulders and be the persons that make those decisions.
Yeah, I have to agree with Sarah on this. I would like to see a little bit more. I know that everybody wants to be a little more flexible and light to the touch on this, but I think you have to have a little bit more of a guardrail sense of, you're going to be taking chunks of money and giving them out. You want to make sure it's the right way. I think my question of how many businesses are in North Stonington is a legit one, and that should be a readily available number. If it's home base or an LLC, you know, what I don't want to see is an LLC has, you know, land in North Stonington and whatnot, but they're based somewhere else and they have 40 people and they find out about this program. They're like, well, I got an LLC, and you show up there, it's a bunch of trees. Obviously, they're not doing work in North Stonington.
No.
You know, but a restaurant or a hotel that needs the money loses out on money because that money got diverted another way.
And I think the EDC shared that they wanted to see businesses that are domiciled in North Stonington. One of the ways you can determine that is, what's their mailing address? Another one is, do they show up on our grand list? Now, grand list is a good resource, but it's not the ultimate thing, because we have, you know, Coca-Cola International of Atlanta, Georgia shows up on the grand list in North Stonington. And the reason being is they have assets here. So that it's a helpful tool in sifting this out. But I think ultimately it's one of those where's their actual, I mean, if you go to the Secretary of State's website and you pull down their corporate listing, is it domiciled in North Stonington? That's probably the first criteria that really is going to, the biggest sifting machine. Then it asks, you have to show up on the grand list. So there's the second one. When you sift through this, I think what we'll end up with is a fairly tightly, and then employment is one where the vast majority of the businesses in North Stonington do not come anywhere close to 50 employees. I think that's a fairly easy bar to clear. But again, documenting all of those pieces as they go along in filling out their application. And then I think the biggest piece is telling their story and their narrative as to, you know, how are they negatively impacted by COVID? These are the receipts, or these are the impacts, and being able to say, convert that into the ask they're going to be asking for.
Because I was just reading the first couple of paragraphs of it. There's nothing really that forces anybody to prove that. Yes, you have to be in good standing with the state and the town. You have to abide by all the ordinances and zoning and everything, but nothing. So you have to prove that you are doing business in the town of North Stonington. There's nothing that really.
I think that to me is one where if you have a contractor who's domiciled and is based in North Stonington, they may work in Westerly, they may work in Stonington, they may work around the neighborhood, but ultimately they're a business that's here.
Mhm.
I think that was the key that EDC found. Are they somebody who lives in our neighborhood?
Sam, I was going to ask you to speak to this too. If you want to comment first, or if I answer a couple of questions, but I was curious about why the thought about the light touch, just looking to make things a little bit easier on the line.
We were afraid if you made it too stringent, you wouldn't get many people that would want to participate in it. And the more you ask, the less people would want to participate. So we wanted to keep it light. And I mean, I don't know why you would need to get so deep into it. You just got to figure out if they're a business in town and how many employees they have, if they had a hardship, and, you know, explain their hardships. I'm not sure quite what matrices you guys want to get into without overcomplicating this, in my opinion. I think you're just, you know, it's getting a little much.
Yeah, I thought maybe,
It would get very complicated to write it, make sure it's all proper. I mean, I get where you're going with it and analytical thoughts. I get that, but I just think you're going to push some people away, and that's basically where I'm at with it.
I hear you. So maybe raising that bar pushes those away that maybe should be pushed away? To be blunt? I mean,
Again, if we get into that whole thing, I think it's going to get very complicated and getting it. We'd have to rewrite the whole thing. And I mean, we base this on a lot of other towns that are doing this, and this is very it's all been based on stuff that's going on right now. If we want to keep pushing the can down the road and complicating this, we can. If you guys want to do that, that's fine. But Brett, I know he wants to say some stuff. He's
I was going to call
had a
him
lot
next.
to do with this too, so let him articulate too.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Brett, is your mic on?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
All right. Hi, guys. Yeah, I just want to give a little background. So we started this program on EDC, I don't know, towards the end of the summer, maybe of last year. So there's been a lot of time put into this. It was modeled after a few different towns, and EDC has tweaked it since I left Economic Development Commission a little bit more. But I spoke to some of the program directors in Fairfield was one that I talked to a lot too. And a lot of this was structured from them in their process. And they've had numerous different, it wasn't just COVID. They've had other programs prior to this with government funds that they used. And basically his primary point, him in another town, was if you make it too restrictive on how you are screening these businesses, you're not doing justice to the program and getting that money to the businesses that need it and struggle. That's why you have your parameters set, and you have that dialogue, and you have that story to say, this is what I'm doing with the money. This is what I already used the money on, and this is how we're moving forward. It's to help those businesses get over the hump and to strive and to grow in the future. And once you hammer them too much, you're hindering the process. And it's not about, at that point, it's not about helping those businesses. Now you're grilling those businesses. They had a very successful program with it. And actually in the beginning, they gave out less money than they thought because they wanted to keep some in reserve. So they didn't fund all their businesses what they were originally requesting. And then at the end, they went back to give some other businesses more. So it comes down to, the commission as they go through the application. So Nate would screen those, make sure all their documentations are there, they meet those requirements. But then when it comes to the actual grant process and how much they would be given, it's based on their story, their dialogue, and what they're looking to do and how that helps them succeed in the future. And then regarding the 100,000, we came up with that number. Actually, I think Juliet was still here then. And that was based on, there was a range of like 50 to 56 active businesses that we identified that were in our list, that were active in this size range, that would probably apply for the program. And with back then it was an average of $1,000 to $2,500 grant. That's where it came up to $100,000 as that. And we were hoping, we said, hey, we'd love them to go through the whole 100. That shows that these businesses need it and they're thriving and they're looking to grow within our community. But that's the basis for the number. It wasn't just picked out of the air where we said 100,000. We based it on, it was 50 to 56 businesses that we had on the list back then that fell into these categories.
Okay, no, thank you for that background, Brett. Oh, I think Sarah had one more question.
Yeah, so it's not a question. This is not about grilling the businesses. This is not about making things more complicated. It's just about bringing transparency to the approval process. The approval section would be the only section that I would say needs a little bit more information. Even the fact that Nate and Christine are reviewing it in advance and making a recommendation, I think it's not in there. So that would be something that would be, it's a good step for the businesses to understand what the process looks like. And how are you determining that recommendation? If that recommendation is as simple as everybody just described, then it should be very simple to add to that section.
So I just want to respond, and I don't know if something got changed since I know a few things got changed, but based on all the studies in the other towns I talked to, the director or the staff member doesn't give a recommendation of whether to approve or not to approve it. It comes down to the committee to approve or not to approve it. The staff member is only making sure that they meet the required documents, meaning that the taxes, the business is in North Stonington, those kind of things, those criteria. And then, so that part is kept away from the public meeting side of things. And then it goes to the board for them to say, okay, this is what the business is asking for. This is what they're looking to do with the money, or this is what they spent the money on. And then the commission decides. It was never, and that might have changed. So Nate and Sam can answer that one, but none of the towns that I've talked to during the process of going through this program, nobody was recommended by staff members.
Yeah, the only, as far as approval process, it clearly, the enabling language clearly says that the buck stops with the EDC, and their decision is the one that's it's meaningful. That clearly we're going to have staff support as to making sure we have a complete application, that we have all of the documents are in order, and that once that application is received, it's deemed complete by staff, then it's placed on the next EDC agenda.
And just so you guys know, you can look and I can forward you some of the packets that I received from Fairfield that shows how their EDC, so they had special meetings to approve these things and everything, and their minutes were there. And it was pretty straightforward. This is the business applied. This is how much we gave, because that's all public knowledge when you're using funds like these, of how much every business got. But it was pretty cut and dry. And like Nate said earlier, this isn't reinventing the wheel. This is something that other towns have done. And I could sense a little frustration in Sam's voice as he was talking, but the problem is this has been going on quite some time. And I know you guys are hearing about and seeing that final product now, but it has been a discussion. And I think it's been mentioned to the Board of Finance before about the program. And we're trying to get this to go to a town meeting so we can actually get the process going. So businesses can start applying and the money getting into the businesses, because every day matters to these small businesses that have been affected. So delaying the process, now you might recommend tweets, but I think delaying the process and delaying it to go to a town meeting, it's tough. And as the Board of Finance, I understand you guys oversee the finances and the money side of things, but the Economic Development Commission represents and looks at growing the business community and helping those businesses out. So it's a fine line of where you guys draw the line of your oversight of a program that's there and done in other towns. So,
All right, thank you, Brett.
need to get delayed.
Okay, I see Sam's hands back up. Sam, go right ahead as the chair of the E EDC.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, kind of, obviously agree with Brett a lot. I've been on the board for a long time, and when this started, and so I back up basically everything he just said. And definitely put some thought into like how we make this decision, and I understand your angst on that. but it has to, I just don't know what kind of matrix. I mean, I guess if you're not going to approve it, then I need feedback from you guys as to what this criteria would have to be, because I'd be lost to try to figure that out. I think it's well written, and I think it's where it should be.
No, I appreciate that, Sam. So I think, this board, I think you've heard the questions. We're looking for some more content around qualifications, the approval process, some specific language in this doc that might make everyone feel more comfortable. Now, I'd be willing to table this until those few sentences are added to this, unless this board thinks we want to try to vote on this tonight. I'm not sure that it would go through. So Sam, are you willing to, if we were to try to craft something, send you an email with some language that maybe might help us? Would you be willing to rewrite or add that document to your
I
document?
mean, if it's not going to pass tonight, then I don't think I have a choice. You know?
I'd like to interject just one thing. I mean, I think one of the process things that we did as we were assembling this through EDC was, Brett did a lot of background research, and sort of I was handed a baton from the work that was done there. We also I probably looked at 12 different enabling program language, either from here domestically in Connecticut. There was one in Texas, there was one in Oregon, different programs from all over the country. There was no scoring matrix that was provided in any of those programs. As a matter of fact, our application, the way it lays out, is the most complex application to all of those programs that were out there and available. We kind of distilled out the pieces from those. I mean, most of what's in the application here is actually, it's a Frankenstein of programs that have been run in other communities, very successfully run in other communities with very, a very transparent, open process. Clearly the grants being made at a public meeting by the commission in open, not in closed session, but in open session. It's an open discussion between the applicant and the commission. In addition to that, we call for feedback to be brought. We ask that the 3 months after the grant is made, that business has to come back in, respond to, and provide feedback to EDC to say, yep, we're still here. This is how it impacted our business, so we can get their story. So not only the chapter of how we got to the room today, but what impact we got. And I'll tell you, there was some terrific after action reports that were put together by, I think it was Fairfield here in Connecticut, where they actually did a piece that was 100 and some, it's about 170 pages long, where they provided a document about every business that was given a grant, why they were given a grant, what they did on the front end, and then also what the impact on that business was on the back end. It was a terrific report that was put together. And I think that was the after action report that was created once the program was fully funded. And it was based on that, they were able to go back and get an additional appropriation for more dollars to expend to the business community. So I would say from the standpoint of accountability, nothing could be more public than a public meeting. If people want to come in and ask questions, they clearly have the right to do so. I think second to that, we have an application, the way it is put together, that is one of the most robust of similar programs that we've been able to analyze. And I think the third one is, the clock's ticking. We've been working on this as EDC has been working on it for now nearly a year, while the businesses sit and wait to see if there's a program that will be completed. So I think you put those three pieces together. I think we've got a good body of work that's going to remain public and very accountable.
I do have one question. Businesses must remain in business for a minimum of 3 months after receiving the grant. What is the policy of said business defaults on that?
At that point, then the commission would have the right to ask for the dollars back. Ultimately, it depends on the amount as to whether or not you wanted to. Clawback provisions would need to be placed in the grant, and that's really what it is. 3 months from now, we want to make sure you're not making a story about a business that's not going to stay open. We want to make sure you're going to be a viable business into the future.
So we give somebody 10 grand and we send the collections to collect that money back? Or?
Basically, we would have lots of tools at our at our available beck and call, but ultimately, I don't want to have to go down that pathway. But there is a clawback provision that's based on it, which says 3 months from now, we want to make sure you're open. You're going to attest to the fact that you're going to be remaining open. And we're going to ask for feedback in 3 months as to what the impact of the grant was on your business.
So you had mentioned, Paul, that if there was a vote tonight, you weren't certain it would pass. And I think I've mentioned this to Bob before. My personal opinion is, I think the criteria seems like every business can meet the criteria that's listed there. I mean, everybody felt those impacts, everyone, whether it was a household or business. So the threshold is low. The grant, is it taxable revenue for the town or is it free of tax?
As far as income taxes
Yeah.
that the business may have to pay,
Yep.
I have not researched it. I think that would be between them and their accountant.
Okay. It would seem to me, as far as businesses go, that we could pull a list of employee identification numbers by zip code and you'll have a complete list of businesses in town. It shouldn't be that hard. to pull.
It's one way to get there. Some businesses don't have any employees at all. It's just a one person gang.
But
So
you still have to have an EIN.
you do, if you have employees. If you're
No,
just,
no,
if
no,
you're
no.
just a sole proprietorship and you're running under your social security, you may not have an EIN.
I don't think that's true, but we can talk about that later. My opinion, Paul, is the sooner we allocate the ARPA funds and the town gets back to running itself like a business, the better off we are. So if this were to be put to a vote tonight, I would just say yes. Because, I mean, EDC, the town, this board has spent an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out how to allocate the ARPA funding. My opinion is, let's allocate it all so we can get back to business.
Okay, thank you. Winona. Oh, is your hand down now?
Well, I'll ask my two things. So a question is, can you just confirm that the money is going to be allocated first come, first serve?
But the program contemplates that we're going to process it first come, first serve. But as far as if somebody, the first 10 people that come in and ask for $10,000, I think ultimately the grant awards will be based on the EDC's ability to sort of see the field. If they say, if we have 10 people who come in asking for $10,000, ultimately it would be EDC's call as to how much of those grants they would wish to award.
Okay. And then a comment, and this kind of goes to Sarah's point, but when I think about what this program is meant to do, and I understand the importance of it, and for small businesses where this would really matter, I think my main concern is when I read through the document and I looked at the criteria and the application, I don't have a comfort level that we're on like the first kind of question, screening out companies that actually are domiciled and working out of North Stonington. I believe one provision says has operations in, and in the application it says you have an address in. And to me, those are two different things, and they don't necessarily mean domiciled and operating within the town. So again, just a personal comment, I feel like if this is town ARPA funds, I want to make sure that if it is allocated, that is a very strict hard line. And I know you guys want to be soft, but I guess if you need to, I would like for you to be really hard on, this is a North Stonington run business, period.
I think that's the direction EDC has given us as far as, I think that's their clear goal.
Any other thoughts, comments? Yeah, I guess I'm looking for some more guardrails, as we talked about too. Be great to get the funds out there and get it off of our plate, but there might be other uses for the monies too. These monies were meant for businesses like this. We just want to make sure they're given to the right ones. Maybe this is a question for Sam or Brett. Any kind of thoughts where you were going to accept applications for 6 weeks time or 12 weeks time? Look at all those and give monies to those ones that are most worthy. Or you're just going to try to do it first come, first serve. When the money's gone, it's gone. I see Sam, your hand went up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that we will make sure it is a North Stonington business and is within, that was a big discussion on our end. But as far as the first come, first serve, I mean, I think we're gonna get a flood of things coming in. And I don't think it matters, to be honest with you. It's gonna happen pretty quick, I think, and if
So then wouldn't you
the
want,
board needs the timeline in it to make this better, then that's what we gotta do. I mean, but you guys gotta come up, basically, if you're gonna make this stringent, I'm gonna ask the Board of Finance to come up with their language to add to it, because, I mean, we've put a ton of time into this, and, I'm not going back to the drawing board on it.
no, I don't think it would be. I think it would be maybe a few sentences, but this, Renona made me think about this. I mean, should you gather all applicants, then have a review process? Because they might get somebody at the very end, there's no money left, that might be the most in need.
You may be
That's
right.
up to
You
you
may be
guys,
wrong.
I
I mean,
Sorry?
I don't, you may be right on that, but, so if that's what we want to do, then that's what the board wants to do, but
That's your board to make that decision. I just threw it out there as,
well, we didn't. Then what I'm saying is we've had multiple meetings and you have the paper in front of you, what we passed, so.
Yep, okay, all right.
So, Brett,
Carl, go ahead.
In reference to what you were just speaking about, right now, thinking about, you guys have been talking almost a year, so there's, say, 5 or 6 businesses already in line, probably have all their paperwork lined up ready, 1 through 10. But not all the other businesses in town know it. So I'm thinking to Paul that maybe it should be, you have 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it is to apply. So you guys have time to sort through to make sure that the guys are in North Stonington need it and who needs it the most. That would be my only thought.
again, if you guys decide you want that in this, make your comment and it's gonna have to get, I'll have to have a special meeting. Because I think the town meeting is on the 7th. I'm not saying you guys are wrong or anything. I'm just, we're gonna probably miss the town meeting, so whatever it is, it is.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. So where do we go from here? I guess there is, I don't know,
Just warming up.
just warming up. So would you commit here tonight to making those changes if we were to give you a few sentences, maybe some language around a bit of time to collect applications?
I mean, yeah, you guys, I'm gonna have to do it real quick. I'm not sure I can get the board to get a meeting together quick enough and pass, but we can go to another town meeting and whenever the next town meeting is, and sure.
Okay, so what would happen if we tabled this for tonight? What's that? Does it blow everything up for this particular town meeting?
Not necessarily. So you'll have another meeting on the 15th. And the hope is to call the town meeting on the 17th for the 27th. That's our rough draft plan of what we're looking to do because of other items that are going to be on that call. So that's
Okay.
why we'd like to have it. It needs to happen by June 30th, the next town meeting, because of some items on it.
Okay,
So Paul, could we make it as simple as voting to approve it with an open application period and proper vetting that they're town-based businesses and go with that? Does that involve anything special, delay of the town meeting or anything like that? No, we just say we approve it under the following conditions.
I think we've done something similar.
That we have an open enrollment period where we take applicants from, we advertise it and all applicants come in, they get vetted on a level playing field and are awarded on an as-needed basis or as demonstrated basis.
And I think the program language allows for the concept of saying that all of the applications will be processed in a 1 to 2 month period. We can clearly hold them for a period, hold it open administratively.
Yep.
and then put it on the next agenda. So if from a process of ramping this up, if we get it on the next town meeting, it's approved.
Right.
At that point, it's a live fire program. We're going to have a little bit of administrative time just to get the communication process started, saying, hey, we have this program for you. We can immediately get it out to 120 businesses. And then we're adding to our big list as each day goes by. We're going to, our communication system begins.
But let's.
We're likely going to see most of the applications coming in the month of July and August, and we could administratively hold the batch until September.
But let's put a point on the pencil. I think what would make me comfortable is that if it was a level playing field, if there are 5 or 10 companies that already know about this and they're queued up to go in, that doesn't move them to the front of the line. Get them all in and weigh them all against their merit. So the awards are done that way. They shouldn't, I'm not comfortable with the first come, first serve, because people that are engaged in this process and the town boards are far ahead some of the more obscure businesses that are in town. And if we're going to do this and it's government funding for these reasons, it should go to the people with the most need.
Would you think a quarterly batch process would be enough? That you do a funding cycle for once a quarter, you do pull together all the applications, and then you weigh them against themselves because you're going to get that sample from that quarter. So
I would do an open enrollment, first batch, 60 days. We're not going to process any of them. Get your paperwork in at 60 days. We'll filter what we have and make our awards, and then do it again periodically, like you say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just concerned about first in, first awarded approach.
I do have one. Going back to my stickling point of knowing how many businesses are starting to, when do you guys plan on having that number and a tally of how many businesses? How can we reach every single business that should know about this if we don't know who to reach?
but I think we've got a good basis. We know we have a good firm list of about 120 businesses right now today that I can send an email out of my computer tomorrow morning and get 120 businesses contacted. We are supplementing that with things like NEI inserts that we're going to add to. I mean, it's all hands on deck when it comes to identifying these things. We're looking around town hall for the resources that we have in-house, but it's also just being able to have a consistent ongoing process. We're also going to be talking about Facebook feeds. We're going to be talking about kicking it to all of the known marketing methods that we have, in addition to doing a hard mailing to those mailing addresses that we have. Part of it is we know we have to perfect that list, but that's an ongoing process.
But if you don't perfect that list or you even get someone even close to that, you're gonna lose out.
No matter what, we're
People are
going to
gonna
miss
lose out.
somebody. And it's going to be because they don't do Facebook, they don't do email, they don't answer their hard mail, their mailing address. There's a million reasons we're going to miss somebody. The most important thing that we have taken from my perspective is we are communicating on all points across the line that we can possibly communicate. And even when we do that, we're still going to miss people.
Even more of a reason I have to agree with Gary, you have to have an open enrollment period. And then collect as many of these as you can, but you have to first come up with that list and then send that whole list right. I listened to, we had 120, we were based off an old Excel spreadsheet we found behind the refrigerator in town hall or whatnot. And we kept on going down and then we went up to 800.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a very.
It is a process that's ongoing, and we're building the airplane as we fly. I would
When are
also
we
bring
flying?
into a point that Brett has made very clear that, and I agree with. We're going to go knock on businesses' doors, and we're going to say, here's a program that we would like you to be interested in.
When do you guys plan on having a firm list?
A firm list?
Firm list.
But
besides the
I
120
don't
you get
believe
out.
that we will ever get to a firm list. I believe it is a process of identifying businesses.
Okay.
We're going to do things like putting an insert into tax bills saying, who do we communicate with at your business? It is an ongoing process that the town has to undergo. We've established a data bank. That data bank itself is going to be one it's relational, it's interdepartmental. Any of the my office can put businesses in, the assessor's office can put people in, the clerk's office can put people in. So we're trying to establish a means by which we can, one, collect information and two, effectively use it to communicate with. And like any marketing program, your target audience is never going to be 100%. I'm just intellectually, I can't concede that we will ever get every single business.
Okay, thank you.
Dan-
Sam, 1 second, Brett. Sam, would you commit to not allocating dollars to after 60 days, once the mass email goes out, so you can actually review all the applicants you received?
I mean, if the commission's open to it, I can't speak for all the commissioners, for all the members on the commission, but you know, if I can get it to pass through, we'd be willing to look at it.
So I guess I'm trying to look for commitment for you tonight to make this.
I'm
board
not gonna
good.
commit. I'm not gonna commit that talk for my commission.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't see it being an awful thing, but I mean, all the ones we've read have all been written in this way. Now, does that make it right? I don't know, but you know, they've all been vetted too. And I don't know.
So I hear you. So without that, I mean, I thought we were so close there for a moment and now it all kind of fizzled out.
As Gary just said, though, can we put that stipulation on it? And if his commission does not approve it, then they got to come back and we got to wait for another meeting. Does that sound, I mean, if we're all willing to do that right now, we get them started. But if they can't get an answer yes, then they're back to us. If they get an answer yes, they're free to go.
Sam,
That's
the
the way I see
next,
that.
the next meeting of the Board of Finance is the 15th of this month. Do you think you could get an EDC special meeting together before that?
I'll try my damnedest. It's never easy when it's off the normal date. I will say that, as you all know. But yeah, no, listen, I'm all for trying to get this going, and I'm not trying to be. I just want to get it done. So I will do my damnedest to get it passed. You guys pass it however you feel comfortable.
So I guess I'd ask this too, is 60 days the right amount of time that we're going to put in this, or is it 90 days? Is it 75 days?
So while you're contemplating that,
Okay.
can I read
Oh,
what
sorry,
I
go ahead.
wrote real
Please, go
quick?
ahead.
Because I think it just sort of puts a frame on, you can have guardrails, but still also be flexible. Like you can have both, but it gives more transparency. So I just wrote off the top of my head, not that I'm pretending to channel an EDC person, but as a finance person, grants will be collected via open enrollment for the first 60 days. We could talk about 60 in a second, and quarterly thereafter. And then have something about a rolling approval on a quarterly basis. You could say like first of the month of the quarter, something like that. And then applications will be assessed to and checked to confirm criteria is met, because that's not actually anywhere in your approval that it
It's
says that.
whether it's deemed complete or not.
Yeah, deemed complete. Applications that meet all criteria will be forwarded to the EDC for approval. Approval will be prioritized based on highest need or something else. So it's not like holding you to anything specific, but it's providing the businesses a little bit more understanding of what are the steps to get there and why did theirs not get approved and somebody else's did get approved. It's just about making sure everybody understands the level playing field.
So there's some specifics there. So it's going to be a hard motion to make. Other than Sam, I guess I can see your hand waving, saying that you will take these under consideration, and unless that language and these times aren't agreed to by your board, you got to come back and start this process over again.
Yeah, I mean, you guys do what you got to do.
Okay. So I'm going to try to make this motion. Unless you have something else to share, anybody? Winona?
I know Brad's been wanting to speak.
I don't have anything.
Brett, something germane to the topic, I'm sure?
Yeah, it is germane. So I did a lot of research on this over the months and months. And like I said, I talked to people that actually facilitated programs for this purpose. And I understand you wanting to have a timeline in place. Now, everybody that I talked to had was rolling first come, first serve, because it was about the advertising in the beginning, but it was also that the committees just so you know, didn't have special meetings, like weekly meetings to approve these things. So if, for instance, if that's what you want, then you can always put that EDC, it's their every other meeting. So every 2 months is when they're going through these and approving those based on how it's going. But when you leave too much of a time frame in it, then you're basically holding up the process of getting the business relief. And that was the biggest holdback to a lot of the government programs, was how long was it taking to process these things? And each day it takes longer, the business is suffering. So it's not like EDC would be processing these on a weekly basis. Now, Nate would be going through that information, but EDC, whether you ask them to say, okay, do it every other meeting, you're doing it. So that gives 60 days to process these, but it's always going. But none of the towns that I talked to went through all their money in the first 6 months or more. It took time. And like I said, some of them went back to the original businesses. And just to Dan's point, I've been on EDC for 13 years, up until January or February when I left. Getting an accurate business list for North Stonington is extremely difficult. We've gotten lists from sector, we've gotten lists from the state, but there's a lot of home-based businesses. So having a concrete number about the amount of businesses in North Stonington and other towns, it's not just North Stonington, is almost impossible. So saying you want a specific list of all the businesses, it's something that you're going to have a general list, but you won't have all of them. There's businesses that come and close all the time. So making that a requirement to approve something like that, it's just tough. And there's no way that I've seen it. I've seen different planners come through town, and it's one of those difficult things. But if you're putting in a requirement for the time frame, I would just keep that in mind, that, you know, that could be how EDC does it. It's every 2 months or things like that. But just saying that it's a open and closed period, that's tough. If it's an ongoing open enrollment with a time frame, that's different.
Okay, thank you, Brett. So I'm going to try again. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the $100,000 from ARPA funding to benefit small business program, with the contingency that the EDC agrees that there'll be a 60-day hold period for all applications for a final review, and to add language that member Sarah Nelson will forward to Chairman Sharenza around qualifications and, I guess it's qualifications.
60 days would be for the first set, and then
Right.
yeah. After that, go forward.
Yeah. Is that complete enough of a motion? Second. All in favor? I think we'll do this one at a time. Carl, maybe two at a time. Carl, 2 yeses. Sarah, yes. Dan, yes. Paul is a yes. Winona?
Yes.
Vote is 6-0-0 for this money to be approved with those pending conditions. Thank you, Sam. Anything you need from
Thank
us?
you, and I will work on getting the commission together as soon as possible so we can keep this moving forward. Appreciate your
Great.
time.
Thank you, Sam.
2 things really quick. One, if you want to type that up and get it to me at my email, well, we'll get it processed right away. Second, you're all invited to a gathering on Monday, the 6th. If you haven't RSVP'd, if you could, please, EDC at northstoningtonct.gov. We should have a pretty good gathering. Going to be Monday night. So
Great.
certainly you're all invited to come and join the party.
Not because we approved this tonight, but I did receive that invitation earlier.
We should have brought that up earlier and said, yeah, invitations are contingent upon approval.
I was gonna say, we might not be welcome.
That's right.
So,
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate the time. Okay, so next is a grand policy discussion. It should be grant policy, but hopefully it's going to be a grand policy discussion. Sorry for the typo there. And Bob, please.
So
Visions of grandeur.
It is grand. Christine's going to explain it because it's so grand. It's way above me. I don't understand.
Okay, so what you have before you is a policy for the approval of grants up to $10,000. So what we try to do prior to the budget being brought forward for discussion is to foresee any grants that we think the town is going to apply for and hopefully get. But with the way that private foundations come out with grants or the state releases grants, we are looking for a little bit of flexibility for reimbursable grants up to $10,000. So this is not for matching grants or for partial matching grants. This is that a separate entity is going to give the town up to $10,000 for whatever the project is. So for the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to use the Cemetery Commission as my example. So in the current budget, the upcoming budget, we have $8,000 allocated for the Cemetery Commission. They already know that they're going to use that for maintenance in their cemeteries and some reconstruction work up to $8,000. If we find that there is a grant for, say, $5,000 for reconditioning of stone walls or headstones, then this policy would enable us to apply for that grant, knowing that you will support it as long as the Board of Selectmen says yes. So we would have the ability to apply for the grant, not have to come forward and say, we'd like to apply for this grant. Then if we are given the grant, we would go to the Board of Selectmen and say, can we accept this grant? If they say yes, then we will bring forward an additional appropriation request for that $5,000 so that it's not limiting the $8,000 that's already in the Cemetery Commission's budget. Because they've already decided how they were going to spend that $8,000 when they put that request in for their budget. Yes. So in any case that we think we can use these grant funds to just offset what we've budgeted, we would do that first. But if it's an additional project that was not envisioned at budget time, we don't want to limit the department's ability to get things done, especially if there is free money that they can use.
What's the stuff that's getting eliminated? You actually come to us and ask if you can apply for a grant?
Yes. Asking if we can move forward with it, because if we want to know that if it's a 100% reimbursable grant, you're going to approve an additional appropriation because we know we're going to get the money.
Okay.
If we get the grant.
Right, I guess that's what I was going to. So this, I don't see any harm here because it's going to be a grant that we're going to get. You're asking for us to front the money until we get those dollars come back to the general fund.
Just
my
to
understanding.
be really, really clear, this is 100% reimbursable grants, not matching grants.
Not matching grants only, and it is written explicitly, any grants that are 100% reimbursable up to $10,000.
And it goes before the Board of Selectmen to be approved. So there is, at time, there's for people to come question or answer what's going on.
Yes, so we would have the ability to apply for the grant. Then if we receive the grant and the Board of Selectmen decided it did not fit with the vision of the town or projects that we were working on, they could say, no, thank you for applying for the grant. We don't want it.
Are we going to track that in the undesignated fund?
We will
Or-
continue to do so, yes.
So there'll be like a separate little, hey, we have these grants out there that we have earmarked and the undesignated fund is at this balance, but removing all these, this is what the delta is going to be if we get all these matching grants for that.
Yes.
Okay.
And if it doesn't get approved,
If it doesn't, if we get the grant and it doesn't get, so if we apply for a grant and we don't get the grant, it goes nowhere.
okay, so this isn't about that. This is just, we got the grant and we want to spend the $10,000, but we don't have the money yet. So we're going to take it out of the undesignated fund.
Yes, and know that it's not going to be
Right.
out of that allocated, again, for
Yeah.
example, $8,000. So then they only have $3,000 to do everything else that they needed to do for the year with mowing and other things.
This is to prevent really you guys signing up for something, doing all that legwork and us saying, no, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which has happened. Especially when there's a change of administration, right? So things that the past administration were working on that maybe this administration didn't agree with, those grants got knocked back.
And again, this is looking at smaller grants up to $10,000 so that it's not a very large capital purchase.
Should this, what whose policy is this?
It is a joint policy between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. The Board of Selectmen approved it at their last meeting. So it's similar to the MOU that you have with the Board of Ed for the creation of the non-lapsing fund.
The undesignated fund might have to, that policy might have to be looked at because that's something, as detailed as the undesignated fund policy is.
In what regard?
You could say excluding.
Excluding,
There will still be a formal additional
Okay.
appropriation at the end of all of this.
at the end of all this.
Yes,
we're
but this just says you're going to say yes.
We're gonna say yes, okay.
That's a step.
I have no concerns. I would like to make a motion. I have never made a motion.
Okay, so nobody second it.
But I didn't actually hear what he said, but it doesn't sound like it was in my favor. Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we approve the joint Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance approval of grants up to $10,000 policy as
Second.
written.
Second, okay, we have a first.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Winona?
Aye.
Aye, 6-0. The grant policy is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next line item, this was kind of the target discussion for this meeting. It's getting a little late now, but we can see where we can get to it. Budget development and transparency. So we all just got through what we thought was a pretty good budget season. Still some questions out there about how departments might be coming to their values. I guess this discussion, hopefully Gary helps me get this thing going to talk about expectations that we might be able to set for this coming year.
Yeah, I mentioned this to Paul with a couple other board members present after the last meeting. It would be helpful for me to be able to access or know what the cadence is for the meetings as some of the budgets are built. Because while, the budget process is very transparent, when it came down to asking questions about various line items, there was a little bit of pushback that occurred. So, I see the schedule here and I get that. I have no problem with that. We'll go through those steps. I'm looking to be able to access the meetings, the Board of Education meetings, the Board of Selectmen meetings, where they're actually building the budgets that are formally presented to the Board of Finance when this starts. And could we reach out to those boards, with the big budget item boards? So at least we could have a presence. It doesn't necessarily need to be me. It could be any one of us. It could be all of us. But I think the Board of Finance would benefit from a little greater transparency into how the budgets are put together.
So the way that I included the current year's budget timeline, just so you had it as a visual, we include the Board of Selectmen meetings and when first reviews are going to happen and when second reviews and after presentations. So I can collaborate with the Board of Ed and ask them to include those kinds of details so that we can expand on this, because I think that would be helpful. They typically start their process, I think, in January, hearing from the two schools and then also their service areas like information technology and facilities. So we can work with them to try and incorporate some of that onto the full schedule so that if you want to attend those meetings, you have an idea of when they're going to be.
So I think that's going to go a long way. So I know the Board of Education, they have a lot of special session, what's the term? Executive session meetings, and Christine, you may not know the answer to this, but are there budget dollar discussions happening in those executive sessions that the Board of Ed frequently has?
They should not be. All of that should be happening in public meeting. The items that can be discussed in executive session are performance of specific employees. They can have executive session contracts to discuss contract negotiations, but not so the overall teacher's contract and what the terms of that are going to be for the 3-year. But officially voting on those numbers and having those discussions at the more granular level of textbooks for the schools, athletics and all those things, those should be happening in public meeting.
Yeah, okay. So most of these budget discussions should be open meeting that we, as a Board of Finance member, can sit in and anybody from the public can sit in and listen to.
Yeah, it would just be great if they were, if we knew when that process started and the
Okay.
meetings were flagged for us. And I think they meet right before this board anyway.
Right.
So it'd be almost convenient for the Board of Finance.
So were you gonna read?
Paul, one quick thing is, because you participated. So when they do contract negotiations, a Board of Finance member can always be on that negotiation board. I know Paul was present when I was on the Board of Ed, and we had members all the way through. So, yeah, when it comes time to negotiate, you should be able to put someone from the Board of Finance in that room.
I don't think there's any of those discussions this year, though, right? We just did teachers last year, before, it might have been 3 years ago now, I don't know.
I thought teacher contracts were up this coming year.
Are they really?
I think so.
So there'll be an opportunity then.
What about individual salaries, like certain positions and everything, when that's being discussed? Shouldn't a Board of Finance member be associated
No,
with
that's
those?
typically Board of Ed, and that's a Board of Ed decision.
Even though I think maybe as a complete board, we can all agree that the biggest line item is salaries in this town, and they're not going down, they're constantly going up, and it pretty much always gets thrown back on the Board of Finance saying once we start saying, hey, it's gonna cost too much, it's your budget now, guys. It's your budget, not ours. It's your budget because you're starting to make tweaks to it. It's kind of a, it's not our budget because we aren't paying these salaries. We didn't negotiate these salaries. We didn't sign up to those salaries. Somebody else did. So it's kind of unfair that we as a board get thrown over saying, it's your budget now. You're making some tweaks to it. No, it's your budget. No, we didn't sign up to those salaries, which is, I think with the budget and the general government and on the Board of Ed side is the largest chunk of money. And once you sign up to those salaries, you're locked into those salaries. So we hear it every single year.
So I think the only salaries that the Board of Ed is involved in that Board of Finance can't participate in is on the central office. I'm pretty sure that you can participate in custodial, paras, teachers. Can they do administrators? I can't remember. But that'd be a question for the Christine.
I just don't know how the rest of the board feels about that.
Well,
That is the largest chunk.
I think there is, I think it's reasonable. A lot of times we've heard of changes, perhaps individual salaries or additional staff members that maybe weren't planned for, and that's going to have a budget impact. So, but I can take that to try to get a hold of Christine Wagner and ask her, when these sessions start and, some of the sensitivity we have around this.
Yeah, we might have, there's specific Connecticut state statutes that dictate how we can govern the Board of Ed budget, and it's limited. I only know that because when I wrote the policy, I had to go back and read all the statutes. So I'm happy to just like shoot an email out that has a statute. It may or may not prevent, it may not prevent, it may say it's fine. Like, I don't know, it may not refer to it at all, the salary question, but it's very limited, the statute itself, and it's interesting. So I'll share it out for reference.
No,
but,
that's good.
Just something to think about.
I think the only thing I've ever read in those statutes are that we can't reduce the Board of Ed budget unless there's some change in EDC funding, some other major change, whether it be enrollment or other things. But other than that, it's kind of bottom line oversight, and that's it. Doesn't mean we can't look at line items and see where we think there might be savings and suggest that for Board of Ed or Board of Selectmen's requested increase to pare that back, because they're always going to, both these boards will always ask for an increase, but the ask and the need and what they get is what we can afford, right? So I think there's opportunity there to influence those budgets.
but like what I'm saying is, if we know that, you know, we do the budget every single year, we know how much, and we kind of can forecast, all right, we kind of have an idea what this is gonna be, and they're gonna say, well, we want to hire this, somebody at this much, and we like, probably wouldn't it be the best to sign up to something that high? We can at least give it a little bit more of an advisory of before things start getting signed up for salaries on that.
I think it's reasonable. I think we do it.
We can't make the decision for them. We can't say, no, you shall do it this way, but at least we can say, probably wouldn't be the best thing to be doing.
Yeah, I think we can do that by watching the bottom line. How they spend it is up to them. If they need $100,000 for 2 new custodians or whatever that might be, maybe there's a needed or maybe they're not, but I think they're going to have to find money in the existing budget. That would be the same for the board. of
Yeah,
Selectmen.
but
So,
the problem with that is, and hopefully I'm just learning this, is you tell, the only way we can do that here without doing, because we're not allowed to do line items, is tell them, no, the budget will not pass. Then they come back and say, well, since you didn't pass the budget, we're gonna drop baseball, we're gonna drop soccer, we're gonna drop all the odds and ends to make you match, which makes us look like the bad guys because we didn't approve it.
No, I think that's real, right? But I think that's why what we haven't done up to this point is say, we suggest you reconsider line item 19, 133 and 237, which aren't after-school sports, aren't this. If they choose to not take that advice and hurt children, that's on them, but I don't think that would be the
That
case.
the line item down here on Wednesday or whatever it is that they're gonna pronounce, give us, needs to be moved up so we know what they're gonna do.
Say it again, Carl.
They came last time, the last people to come in to see us to give us the budget.
Right.
So, and we were so close that we didn't have any extra days to send them back suggestions without having to move the bottom line. They
I see.
need that date to be moved up, or we need to move ours down. So we have a couple days or a week.
Now, I think that's real because I know that's a big unwieldy budget they have. And they
Yeah,
spend a lot
it's,
of time
I know
on
it's
it.
tight with Christine's schedule
Oh, yeah.
to
no, I
get that
it.
in, but right now we're starting. Last year we couldn't because we were so close. So I don't see why we can't move.
So I think maybe we invite Christine here, or we're not maybe, we will invite Christine here and let them know that, you know, we should have this, let's target a month earlier.
Rough-
If
yeah,
it
with a
squeezes
rougher
down to
idea
3
so we know
weeks,
where to
so
go.
be it, but
But a lot of those decisions are being made now. They're gonna affect the budget when we're gonna be sitting here in February and March. And if we can get ahead of it and if we can get ahead of some of this stuff, it will make it that much easier when we have to sit down there and make the decisions.
so they have an approved budget. So I'm not sure what decisions are being made now that are going to
Next year's
impact.
salaries,
Well, but
2 or 3.
which
different
is the
salaries
largest
increase.
amount of money that everybody.
yeah, but
Oh.
if you remember, we saved almost, I think they saved like $60,000 last year just in benefits alone. And then also a significant amount in salary. I think that was like another, I don't remember the exact number,
then-
but they saved it because they brought in, when they had retirements, they brought in younger teachers at lower steps. So I think from like from what we're seeing in practice, when they can bring in the lower salaries, they're doing it. Because we're seeing that was why they were able to account for like 1/3 of the special education overage.
Yeah,
That's what was stated, that
They're not.
part of the savings that or the reductions that they brought was targeting less tenure backfill resources, but they weren't sure that they could deliver against that. And then you layer on some of the reported salary increases that were being discussed, and I'm like, this is gonna be a train wreck. Because if you can't hire at a lesser rate, which in this market is damn near impossible, and you're giving raises out now that affect us in January, I just don't see it balancing.
One of the items that Christine Wagner always says with the budget schedule is that it's better for them. They have a more realistic view of retirements and staffing changes the longer we wait into the cycle. Because our ordinance says that our town meeting shall be the first Monday in May, that's why we have that tight schedule we have this year. I haven't looked at the school calendar for next year, but this year we lost a week because of public school break. So we held the budget hearing a week earlier than we quote unquote had to. because of being respectful for the public school break and people not being present. So I think when we look at the school calendar, we'll see if we're going to be in that same position. And, if you decide now that that's when you want to have it, then you make that known, that you will have that hearing the Monday of public school break. And if people want to attend, they need to not go on vacation or go on vacation on Tuesday. Because I think that's one of the challenges is they want to see how far they can get to see who's going to retire because they don't get that information until later in the year. And that's where a lot of their savings do come from.
That is very good information. Right. No, I get you. I mean, so we have to make things more timely. They get the budget to us earlier. We work on the weeks we have off, those things. I'm not sure if you guys have had these discussions yet, the Board of Selectmen or not. Is there earnest, real discussions about sharing staff and really trying to find synergies there that could be the home run for the town, right? So whether it's administrative folks, hire staff that run finances for the town, does that get any legs? I heard it talked about a number of years, but is that a realistic expectation?
So we did start discussing it probably about 2 months ago when we talked about the custodial job. I mean, the building supervisor job, rather, the grounds jobs. And as we talked about it, we realized that, yeah, we'd save someone on the school side, but we'd have to put somebody else on the town side. And we're just trading dollars. So on those kind of jobs, it doesn't always make sense. I mean, I'm saying that we shouldn't have more discussions on it. But to put 2 extra guys on the highway department so we can do the grounds and do the baseball field and all the things that the current guy that does that for the school, the grounds for the school, if we save money on the school, but we add it to the town side, what do we really save? There was some thought to do that now with the business manager's position. But I talked to the new superintendent.
Pause for it. Is everyone aware the business manager for the Board of Ed has left the town? So that is a posting out there now to replace that person. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of that or not.
So just to give you a little feedback on that, I'm sure that I know that not even all 3 Board of Selectmen are on the same page on this, but I spoke to the superintendent.
Yeah.
And he said to me, here's the deal. I'm brand new. I'm coming in and I've lost pretty much an entire central office. We've got a brand new guy doing the supervisor of buildings. We're looking at now a possible new grounds person. We have a new administrative assistant. He said, so, and I equate this to, right, so we just hired this guy to be the new basketball coach at the University of Rhode Island. He's going to take the job. And he finds out the next day, his 5 best players go into the transfer portal and they're leaving the program. And we say, that's fine. You still have to win the conference championship. With who?
Right.
So the way Troy put it to me was, I need a player. I need someone that can do the job. I can't, at this point, I'd love to talk to the town about, and maybe we can down the road, about sharing services when it comes to what maybe Christine and Sue do on the town level and what the business manager does on the school side. But to talk about that now, when we have so many new pieces, I'd like to get someone that's a proven entity in to do that, and then sit down with the town, have discussions moving forward. We did get Christine did agree to let Christine Dias be on the hiring committee. So there'll be at least some conversation with what the town does on the town side. So when we're hiring this person, there's some expectations there about how we're going to work with the town. We're hoping that it would be better communication than there has been in the past.
So I think that's a positive, but I think, well, for this particular role, once you hire, that ship has sailed, right? There's no synergy to be had there, but maybe are there other roles?
Yes.
That maybe that they can pause on, or you can pause on and then find synergies. 1-on-1 doesn't have to equal 2, right? It can be 1.5 or something.
So, yeah, once this person comes on, the best we can do then is try to tweak the positions down the road, is if there's a way we can do that. But what the superintendent was just saying, I got to get somebody in here that knows what they're doing because I've got so many other new people. And he's starting out as a new superintendent, and the entire office is over. So this hit to me, if I wasn't losing Robbie McCarthy, if I wasn't losing all the people we've lost in the last few months, and I was just hiring a new business manager, yeah, it'd be great. We could sit down with the town and try to work something out. But My cupboard's bare. We've got all new people and I don't know who,
So
there's no one with institutional knowledge that's left in the central office.
I get
basically.
you. So how many roles have been lost? And then maybe this is a question for Christine W. also, but, or maybe it's the superintendent. How many, everybody's gone. Is that 2 people or is that 10
No, there's one person left in the central office
out of,
that Suzanne does accounts payable and does some accounting.
but I mean, is it total staff, a staff of 8 or what's that number? Bob? You
No,
know?
it's, let's see, Robbie, Suzanne, Deb, Peter.
If you include the director of technology and the director of facilities, so then it would be 2 people of 6 are returning staff with
Okay,
a new superintendent, new director of finance, new executive assistant to the superintendent, and the new director of facilities. He's been in the role for several months, so he's not as new.
And what are the 2 open ones?
Those were the ones that are having the change. The ones that have consistency are the director of technology and the bookkeeper. Those people are
Okay.
staying.
So it's
just
not,
but
there's
we-
not no one in those roles. they're just
No,
new
we just,
people.
but we just recently changed the facilities manager. There's a RFP out now for grounds. We just changed the special ed director. So I'd say that, well, if you look at all the management positions on the school level, the majority of those people have less than 6 months worth of knowledge.
All right, I think I get it. And I'm not seeing a lot of opportunity here because those roles are filled, but
It seemed like there was. gonna
There's
be-
no but.
I mean,
There's
it
no
seemed like
there's-
it was going to be a great opportunity for us to do this.
yeah,
And maybe the way the cards fell, it didn't work out the way we'd like to. But I'm hoping that down the road, within the next year or 2, we can come to maybe we can do the payroll, or maybe they can take on something else. And we can trade some services that way.
I guess at this point, it's having some more openness between the 2 major boards. I think with Christine on there and others involved, that's going to help, right? Because there's always been us, them kind of a thing, us, them and us, I guess it would be mentality there. So, all right, all we can do is hope for better things. But I think in the meantime, I will contact Christine Wagner, ask her about what's going to happen with their budget when they start growing that. It's not until January, I heard, but there are some decisions being made. If we can get some insight to that, we should be able to, because those are in open meetings, so that shouldn't be a secret. What else are you thinking? Oh, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
So if we're good with this topic, I think a couple of things that would probably be helpful for us to agree on that we want. I remember there being, like, we would have liked to have this extra column that showed the, like, there's certain things. So I think that we would have liked to have seen, getting the drafts of the budgets, not the individual drafts, but like the consolidated draft, and then having, I think, an extra column that was the delta. So like maybe we could mock something up, or, and then just, I think that would be helpful for next round.
I also think if you guys start thinking now on, you had that cover sheet in the
Yeah.
past couple of years, but didn't really do much with it. So if there are extra things that you want to ask for, start formulating that. So we send it out in December, we have all that information. Also, we are coming to the end of the fiscal year. So if there are specific things or some formula or template that you want for the annual report that you want every department to include in theirs, let's get that together now so that when we send that out in August, we can make sure that everybody is sending that information back. I know there was a discussion of liking to have in the different departments the budget versus actuals, but that is included in the audit at the end. So it depends on what you want on a granular level within the actual annual report versus what you want as the audited financial documents at the end.
So it's not a lot of time for us to make a decision on what we want in that annual report then.
Annual report, you have 3 months
3
to
months.
figure out what you want. I tried to send out the ask for it in August, telling people that it's due by November, so you have it for budget time.
Okay. So I guess we will have another meeting or 2 Between now and then, we can kind of stew on that and see what we'd like to see. And then let's have some ideas now, but nothing we have to decide tonight, but before too long, we have to.
Maybe we can, you can put it on the agenda, and if you don't, I'm sure we have it somewhere in our email, but if you don't mind sending us like a copy of the last one. I know
Oh,
we
yeah.
have it. I
Yeah.
know I got it. I read it
No, I
at
can send
home.
Yeah.
But there was a couple scenarios, there were like a couple groups that were like actually like perfect. They had a lot of the financial things in them and others had nothing. So we could just issue some general guidance based on some of the folks that did it, like a nice
Yeah.
job.
I'm not sure that was you or Mike that suggested that. They should all look the same.
Yeah.
Right? The reports coming from each group should be the same. So there's no guesswork, right?
Yeah. So
Maybe it was you.
I will actually, it was Mike. I will actually send that out tomorrow, the
Okay.
current annual report, just so you can start looking at it and have time to formulate ideas. And so I don't forget to send it.
Actually, I probably should know this off the top of my head, and this is just going from a policy standpoint. The undesignated fund policy, I think we have to review it after the budget, and we have to set the threshold percentages. I believe.
Oh, then okay. You don't think it's
Procedural,
it's
yeah.
not there now?
Every June.
Every year.
I think it's every year.
Really?
I can't remember if it's every year or every other year. So,
Oh, that's written into our new policy. So we
Yes.
put that restriction on ourselves.
because we were gonna do it at the beginning, we're gonna do it at the beginning, but it forces us to
Okay.
make sure that we look at it and we're not overtaxing
Oh,
or
yeah.
we're not undertaxing.
Oh,
And we're
yeah.
making sure we have enough in the policy itself.
The undesignated fund balance limits shall be reviewed annually, no later than January 1st of each year by the Board of Finance to determine compliance with bond rating agencies' recommendations and annual audit findings. So you should wait until after we get the audit, which October, November, and before January 1st.
Did you tell us who wrote that?
Yeah, I
please,
did.
To let us know
I
who we
did.
have to thank for that annual.
I did.
Oh,
That
that's right,
guy.
too. I
Yeah.
remember
Did a
now.
great job.
That's not, that's what I meant to say, Sarah.
Yeah.
That's right. Nice
Got the
job.
wrong month.
So that reminds me, since we're speaking about limits, we don't have to do it tonight. Does this board have any appetite to look at the non-lapsing account for the Board of Ed to set some limits on it? Right now, I think it's 2% of their overall budget can go into their non-lapsing every year. But should there be a cap on what that balance might eventually be?
I'll open my mouth on this one. So if we cap it, right?
Yeah.
You run the risk of them saying, we're gonna become close and everything, burn. It's gonna be just like, just like the old days.
Say that again.
If we put a cap on it and they know they're gonna be here, they're just gonna go and burn it. It's gonna be like the old days
Well, I
where they
think
didn't
they're-
have.
I would think they're still good stewards of their money. I mean,
Well,
they
yes, I
burn on
never,
things.
I never said they wouldn't. I'm just saying that they would go in.
Well,
it would be days of
let's
old.
plan for success.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's plan for success. So, I mean, 2% of their budget, 280 grand a year or whatever it is they can put into this thing is $500,000 enough to have in that fund to buy erasers and pencils and fill up the cupboards.
Yeah, but that's not what they're using it for.
Well, they
Using it-
can.
They can, but they're gonna be using it for the tractor that they have coming up in another year or two. They got it
That's
for,
great. Right.
yes, and then they're using it for, there was some discussions that they're gonna use it for, a rainy day fund, like, the boiler goes, yeah, they can use it for that. There's a bunch of things that they can use it for. Are they gonna use it for that?
So
I mean, go ahead.
to have a meaningful discussion about whether we should cap or what it should be, I think we need to see how it's currently being utilized.
I think we do have that insight. I mean, right now, there's not a lot. That's coming out of that, although Christine might- I think there was a couple big things that might be coming
Yeah.
out soon.
So when asked, Christine had shared a list.
Mhm.
I would love to see that as like a email of some sort, like every 6 months, like I think it'd be more appropriate, at least for now, to say,
What's the
tell-
forecast?
yeah, tell us what's on your list.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was a great discussion. Everything she said, everybody was like, yeah, all of that stuff's important.
So I remember that. That was just a runoff list of potentials, right?
Right.
But no actuals.
Yes,
right?
that
So we
was
don't know
like-
what
that
the
was
actual.
like the dream sheet of things that they would like to fund.
Yeah.
Should they have to, I want to see the gazadas, the
Okay.
actual, what are we spending?
So they've had this thing for 2 years now, is that right?
Yeah.
We should be able to see, they should have a nice list, if any, that they spend. I'm not sure there's been a whole lot that's come out of it, but maybe there has, I haven't seen anything. So, but I think that was one of the remits that we would see that. And I don't know that we get reports readily from the Board of Ed on that kind of stuff.
I will request from the Director of Finance the most up-to-date version for your meeting on the 15th and see what I get.
Good place to start.
I would have to, Mike Anderson was the one that made the motion. I was the one who seconded it to put this account in place itself. I would have to have some really, really convincing charges in, like Gary was saying, the gazautas to see that we, one, have to put a cap on it, because right now, every year we have to re-up it.
Re-up it.
We have to sign up. Every single, you have to sign your name.
Negative.
Are you sure?
Reasonably. It's just, we just made this policy. It's theirs until we decide to revoke it, which I don't have no intention of suggesting. I'm suggesting it's just a guardrail to say, is,
Yes, there's
Yeah.
a stipulation at the end of the policy that says that it can, how it can be,
Within
Terminated.
Yeah, 60 days notice.
but not that
Right.
it has to be renewed.
I
It's
thought you had-
automatically renewed.
Oh, okay.
that was a different thing.
That's another thing.
Yeah, but again, maybe I wrote that policy. We don't have to
Yeah,
do it,
maybe
we
you
don't have to
wrote
do it annually. But
Oh, thanks, Paul.
so this is just a suggestion. I mean, can it grow to $1 million? Are we happy with that? Maybe we are. Is 280, is 2% the right number? I don't know. Just wanted to bring it up since we talked about revising your policy annually. About those brackets on that.
Yeah, I just want to see the float, you know.
Yeah.
Comes in, it goes out. That's gonna tell, at least to me, whether
Right.
whether it's targeted right or not. Not targeted right, but whether it's
Yeah, okay, I think that's
sufficient
reasonable.
enough
I
or
think that's-
overly sufficient.
So the ask is gonna go out. We're gonna know. Let's do the scholarship
Are
first
they
before we
gonna-
do something crazy.
Are they gonna be consistently at 200? Are they gonna be consistently 200, then 400, then down to 100? To see where that burn rate is and how much they're keeping in the account for, also how long. If they ask for a bunch of increases on their capital side and they have a lot of money in there after a couple of years, we're like, what's going on, guys?
Kind of where I was going to.
Yeah.
All right, if you have you're building your savings account, but you're asking for more money, is that right for the taxpayer? Okay.
Paul, does anybody know, their equipment as far as furnaces, roofs and all that stuff, does that come out of their budget to fix the school? Okay, so that emergency fund would help them, that they wouldn't be coming back to us to get a boiler because they already have. a set
That's
aside.
true. I mean, it was a big capital item, like a new roof on the school. Or a new boiler. How does that get funded?
So repairs,
Yeah.
as far as I understand, come out of the school's budget. If it is hopefully they won't need a new roof for a
Yeah,
very
right.
long time. We just.
Bad
have-
example.
But I think,
Have to be a capital improvement, they'd have to come ask.
I
But I'm
would
just
think.
thinking, if they're building that thing up, and every time they got some major thing, they're gonna come ask for it. I mean.
So that's kind of what our general fund's for, right? The town has a
that's what our-
general
yeah,
fund.
That's what our general
Sure.
fund is.
So we kind of have two general funds. One's less, one's big G, one's little g, I guess. But there's two funds for that kind of thing. But if there was a major capital need for something that was needed to keep the school heated. Is there another capital fund that they have? for that?
no,
There's not. So
they have their operating budget and all of their regular maintenance and repairs would be coming out of their regular operating budget. They have a non-lapsing account. I think it would be up to the discretion, if it was an emergency, I think it would be up to the discretion of the Board of Ed to then come to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance and say, if they weren't planning to use the non-lapsing, we would need an additional appropriation from the undesignated fund.
We have really, you can't tell them how to spend even that non-lapsing.
Correct.
That's the other thing I was just gonna say. Is there anybody or any checks and balances of the school maintaining their building? If I remember a few years ago, way before Bob was even here, nobody maintained the building hoping they would get a new one. So is there anybody keeping track of, is there anybody in that school that's keeping track of, yeah, that window needs fixed, or
I would think there is, yeah.
So they have the director of facilities, and then I think that they report directly to the superintendent. So between those two positions, they should be keeping the school running.
anybody from the Board of Selectmen once in a while check with them, or that's probably not there right now?
No, I check
So-
with Will on a regular basis. We probably speak almost once a week. And he knows where all the warranties are, all the things that we couldn't keep track of in the old buildings we have. And he has those all put aside. So
So
they're
there's a little
probably
bit more,
that hallway right there. I believe they're in his office right
a
there.
little more check.
Oh, much more so than I think before. Yep.
Yeah, we want to protect the town's asset, that's for sure. So hopefully,
There's some thought to a discussion that might come up after July at the, there's two people that are on the permanent school building committee, Wayne Coates and Jim Lloyd, excuse me. They're talking about possibly bringing that back only to, so we have extra set of eyes on things that wouldn't be part of the normal budget. Being a new school, they're not expecting to have what they did with the old schools, whether they're replacing doors or upgrading, but just to have someone would have additional eyes on the building.
okay, great. I think that was a good chat for the first budget development toward a more transparent future. Any other thoughts on that topic before we go to the minutes? Hearing none. I don't have those dates in front of me. I think there was a set or two anyway.
3:30, 4:13.
Yes, so you are looking at minutes from March 30th, April 13th, and May 18th.
And 18. Has everybody reviewed those minutes? Any questions on those minutes? May I make a motion then to approve the minutes from March 30th, April 13th, and May 18th as written? Second. Thank you, Gary. All in favor of approving said minutes, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Winona?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. 600 for all three of those sets of minutes. Thank you for that. Last line item, public comments. Nobody here, nobody there. Second, Gary and Dan, thank you for that. All in favor? Aye.
I know.
Thank you.
I don't even try for that one.
Amy, Winona, thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk to you guys on the 15th.